Okay, this video is going to take you through what we went through in class today as far as introducing variables using an illustration, that being the utensil drawer inserts. So you should have this page in front of you, which you'll be writing on, and then you should also have your Chapter 2 variable illustration questions in here that you're going to be filling in the blanks, taking notes on this as you go. So you'll have to pay attention closely to these questions, because you're not going to necessarily see the answers. You're going to hear the answers on what's going to be going on in there. So as we look at the utensil drawer inserts, this is going to be an illustration of variables. In fact, I'll just tell you right now that each of these compartments is going to be like what a variable is in Java in writing a class. And so the first question on our sheet is, what is the purpose of the slots in the drawer insert? And basically the purpose is to store different types of utensils. So we're going to store different types, knives, forks, etc., so that we know where they are and when you need to use them. Okay, so they are to store different types of utensils, and these words I'm having you fill in the blanks with are words that are key to, and they relate very closely to things that we'll be talking about as we deal with Java and variables. So these are good terms that you should be writing down. So the store is to store different types of utensils so that you know where they are when you need to use them, and that's going to be the important thing, is that variables in Java are going to store data that you need to use in your program. So the question is, how can you distinguish between the different slots in here? And basically the idea is that if you maybe give them names, you could say like the leftmost, the rightmost, and the middle left, middle right, or you could call them slot 1, slot 2. The idea is that you give them names, and that would be one way to do it. The other thing is, so I guess to fill in the blanks, we can distinguish between the different slots by declaring a name for each slot. So by declaring a name for each slot, you can distinguish between which slot is which. And then in B, you also have to decide and declare in your own mind what type of utensil each slot will store. Variables store things, and so each of these slots are going to store a different type of data or utensil. And so what we want to do is we want to name these. So I have had these hidden until now. So basically you can take the first slot, and this would be the name of this first slot. You can name it slot 1, and the type of utensil is it's going to store knives. Now I put it in this fashion because you're going to see this is going to relate to how we declare variables later on in Java. So we're going to slot 1, and it's going to be for knives. Then the next thing is we want to label is the next slot is going to be slot 2, and that is going to be for this slot right here. It's going to hold forks. And then the next slot, slot 3, is going to be for big spoons. And so you can write that in on your paper, and that will be for slot, oops, I got to get this right. This isn't working. There we go. Okay. So slot 3 is going to be right here. And then slot 4 is going to be, somehow I think I lost my 3 here. And now we're going to go here and get slot 4, and we're going to let's call that for small spoons. That would be right here. So each slot is going to store a different type or a certain type of data or a utensil, and where it's given a specific name, slot 4. So if you look then now in number 3, it says now you are ready to place or to store the utensils in each of their respective slots. So you're going to store things in the slot. And so what you can do then is and I'm not going to take time to write everything here, but you can write the whole thing. So here, go inside the slot, go ahead and write the word knives. In fact, let's write 6 knives. Okay, I'm not going to finish it out because it'll take too long. So 6 knives. In the next slot, just write 6 forks. So that you're actually storing a certain number of forks in here. And then you have 6, let's say, big spoons. And then you have 6 small spoons. So inside each of these compartments is going to be a certain type of utensil. And so you can see that we're storing different things in each of these compartments. So now here's a couple of questions here, number 4 and 5. It says, if you accidentally try to put a fork in slot 1, what will you do? Well, as you start to put it in there, you go, oh no, this is for knives. So you stop yourself. So in 4A, you're going to stop yourself because slot 1 is for knives. And I guess the question is, in what we've already done in writing our programs, what is the thing that stops us? What keeps us from running programs? Well, that is error messages. So it's going to relate to that. So you're going to get an error message if you try to store some type of data that doesn't belong there. And you'll see that as we go on later on. Now, what do you do when you need a fork? Well, you go to that slot. You go to that specific compartment. You go to, in this case, slot 2. And you take out or you use one of the forks. Okay, so you take out the fork, you go to the slot, take it out. And you're going to see that's what's going to happen as we write our programs. Now as we go on, now we're going to go down to the bottom insert. The lower insert here is as we look at each phase of the customer. Now we're going to be illustrating taking an order from the customer, a customer, and then we're going to relate it to Java and actually write a program that mimics this or that exemplifies this. So as we look at each phase of the customer's order, we have to determine what pieces of information we need to remember. So in our little fill in the blanks here, we have to remember certain pieces of information. In other words, what we need to remember means to store something in your memory, to store in your memory, in your brain, something so that you can recall it and use it later. That's the whole idea here with variables, is you store things so that you can use them later, so that we can use that information to repeat the order back to the customer. And so the first thing is Sally Sue. We say that Sally Sue would like to make an order. And so based on that, what do we want to name the slot? Think about, well, what part of this sentence are we going to put inside this compartment? And so the first compartment is going to be we're going to name it customer names. Why? Because that's where we're going to type the customer name. That's a piece of information that we need to know. And so we're going to take and name this customer name. And what it's going to store is names. So it could name Billy Bob, it could name Franklin, Sally Sue, it could name so what's going to go in this slot is just names. The next thing that it says is what type of data will it hold, and that's what we already said. It's going to hold names. So again, I'm putting names here like we said here, knives, fork, that's the type of data. Well, the type of data we're putting in there is names. Now the next thing on this is, so what do we store in that slot now? So basically, you can actually write the words Sally Sue, and I'm not going to write them all because it'll take you too long. Sally Sue, go ahead and write Sally Sue in here, and that right now that compartment is storing the name Sally Sue. Then we go on to the next question. And the next question is, the statement is that she ordered 6 lattes. Well, what piece of information is going to be important as far as repeating back to the customer later? And that's going to be that they ordered, or he or she ordered 6 lattes. And so what we're going to do is we're going to name this to be the num of lattes. We're going to do shortcuts because that's the best way to do name variables. But we're going to say num of lattes is going to be the name of that slot or that compartment. And so what are we going to store in there? We're going to store whole numbers. So you don't order 6.5 lattes or 3 3/4 lattes. You order whole number lattes. So it's not going to store other types of numbers. And so we can go ahead right now and write 6 in that compartment. So this compartment is storing the 6. It's in our memory. It's in what we're going to see here later. It's in the computer memory actually. Okay, the next statement is that each latte costs $3.50. And so we are going to, well, what's the information there on number 3 there? The information is that we want to store in there the cost per latte. So we're going to name that slot cost per latte. And we're going to store in there the decimals. Because when you're dealing with cost, you're dealing with cents, which means decimals. And so we're going to go ahead and write it's $3.50 for each one. Now we're going to write 3.50. But some people are going to go, well, what about the dollar sign? Well, the dollar sign is not a decimal. And so you can't store a dollar sign in this compartment because it's not a decimal. Okay, and that's going to be very important to remember as you go through the rest of the semester. And then we go on to the next one, number 4. What other information will be important? Well, the other information that's going to be important here, hopefully you figured out on your own, but is, well, what is the total cost of the order? And of course, that's going to be the next important piece of information. And so we're going to name the last slot, we're going to name it total cost. And what are we going to store in there is, since it's dealing money, we're going to deal with decimals again. Now the difference between this value or the contents of this one is that this value here, that it's actually going to be $21, is going to be a result of a calculation. So sometimes you're going to find that this compartment will be storing will not be storing a specific number, but it's going to be the result of a calculation. In this case, the result is $21. So we can write that in here. So that's what's being stored in here after it does this calculation. And so these compartments are storing their data. So now you can tell the customer, okay, well, Sally Sue, you ordered 6 lattes at $3.50 a piece, and so your total order cost $21. And how do you get that? You get that from the computer memory that's storing this data. So now we're going to look at a program. We're going to take the data that we learned, that we put down in here, that I have now erased kind of, all the data that was put in here. We're going to take this and convert it into writing Java code. This is real Java code that we'll be doing. And so I don't know why I did that. And what in the world is going on here? Oh boy, I don't know what's going on. Okay. Oh, I know why. I know why it's doing that. All right. This is my fault. Okay. So here we go. What we're going to do is we're going to name this class. Now you don't have to write anything. Just watch because of time. This is going to be a class called latte order, in this case 6, and we're going to have the main method. Just all this should be normal, look normal. Now the little difference here is we're going to have the word declarations as a comment, because what we're going to do now is we're going to write some declarations. You're starting to learn what declarations are. Now we said that in our first slot that we're going to store customer name. We're going to name it customer name, and we're going to store names. And so in this case, names that are the data type that goes along with that in Java is not names, but it's called a string, which we are partly familiar with. We already know that strings are like words and symbols and characters. And so string is going to be the data type. It's going to be the type of data that this slot will hold. And it's going to be, we're naming it customer name because we can't have spaces in there. And also notice that in variables we're going to start with a lowercase letter, but we're still going to camel case. So the word name there that's attached to it is going to start with a capital letter. So a class starts with uppercase letter and does camel casing. Variables start with lowercase letters and are used camel casing. Now, the compiler could care less. This is just conventional, or what programmers do. Now we're going to put this equal sign, which is actually an assignment operator, and we're going to put, this is the contents that's being stored in the compartment, and it's Sally Sue. Now you notice it's got quotation marks. Well, we already know about quotation marks. They go around literal strings, or string literals around strings. And so this is a string. It's got to have quotation marks. The next slot is the number of lattes. We're going to name it num of lattes with no spaces. And it's whole numbers, which means the data type for Java is going to be int. And so int, you should know, should recognize, is the shortcut or an abbreviation for integer, which are whole numbers, or actually positive or negative whole numbers. And so we store in there, this is assignment operator, we're going to store the 6 in the compartment of the second compartment here is going to store the 6, and that's what this is doing. Now this is actually a memory location in your computer memory. It's going to store the 6, and it's going to be named num of lattes. The next one is cost per latte, is the name of, we're going to say that's the name of the memory location or the variable, and its data type is double, because double is the term that's used for decimals. So because we're storing a decimal, we can write a decimal in here. Here again, this is why we said you can't put a dollar sign in there, because it's not a decimal. So you got to be careful that you never do that. Okay, and then the last one was the total cost, and the total cost here is the name with no spaces. It's decimal, so we're going to call it a double. And then this is going to be assigned. Remember, we said this is different because it's the result of a calculation. So here's our calculation, and notice the calculation is the names of variables that are storing that data. So the number of lattes, you don't want to type a 6 here, because the next time this program is used, maybe somebody's going to buy 8 of them. So whatever they buy, that number is going to go in here. So num of lattes comes from this memory location. So we can say that remember we said we stored the forks in here and the knives in here and so forth, so that we can use them later. Well, we stored a 6 right here. We stored a 6. Now we're going to use that. Well, how are we going to use it? We are going to use it in a calculation. And so here it is. The num of lattes the 6 is now being used. And in the cost per latte, we stored a $3.50 in there. Well, now we're going to use it. We're using it right now in this calculation. Now this calculation then will produce the number $21 in this case, and that will be stored in total cost. So you have these things, these 4 pieces of data that are all stored in compartments in your computer memory. They're actually stored in your computer memory in different compartments that are named customer name, number of lattes, cost per latte, and total cost. Now, we're going to use them further in one more step, and this is going to be a common thing, is that we're going to summarize the order to the customer. And so notice we're not going to type Sally Sue because the next person might not be Sally Sue. So what we do is we type, notice we're typing the customer name. So we're using this value by typing the name of the variable, and then what that's going to print is going to print Sally Sue, and then it's going to print. Now we already know about this. This is a string literal or a literal string, and so it's going to literally print the comma, the space, your order of, and then a space, and so it's going to say Sally Sue, comma, your order of num of latte, your order of 6. So this is being used. Lattes at cost per latte, that $3.50 is going to be used. A piece costs, and then it's going to say total cost. So now that total cost, which is actually what's being stored in here, is $21. And so that is actually now going to be used in this print statement, and what's going to be displayed is 21.00, and then you have the dollar or the period at the end. All right, so that is variables in a nutshell. They are memory locations, storage locations. They store data so that they can be used later on in the program, and that is the critical issue to understand from this.